The Thompson family was excited about their move to the quaint town of Willow Creek. The small, picturesque town seemed like the perfect place to start fresh. Little Emily, their 7-year-old daughter, was particularly thrilled as she explored their new home and the sprawling backyard that came with it. Her parents, Sarah and John, watched her with warm smiles, hoping this change would help them move past the recent difficult times. The house, a charming Victorian with intricate woodwork and a wraparound porch, had stood vacant for several years before the Thompsons bought it. Its grand rooms, high ceilings, and antique fixtures were a source of endless fascination for Emily, who loved playing pretend in the large, echoing spaces. One sunny afternoon, while unpacking boxes in the attic, Sarah stumbled upon an old, dusty trunk. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten belongings, filled with the scent of old wood and mystery. Intrigued, she called John and Emily over. Together, they pried open the heavy lid, revealing a collection of vintage toys and clothes, seemingly untouched for decades. Among the treasures, Emily's eyes were immediately drawn to a porcelain doll dressed in a faded blue dress with curly blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. "Can I keep her, Mommy?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Sarah hesitated for a moment. The doll's intense gaze made her feel uneasy, as if it was watching her every move. Its porcelain face was eerily lifelike, with delicate features and a slight smile that seemed to hide something sinister. But seeing her daughter's excitement and thinking it was just an old doll, she relented. "Of course, sweetie. Just be careful with her, okay?" Emily nodded enthusiastically, cradling the doll in her arms as if it were a long-lost friend. That night, she placed the doll on a chair next to her bed, ensuring it was close enough to keep her company. As she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that the doll's eyes were following her every move. Sarah and John, tired from the day's work, went to bed unaware of the ominous presence now lurking in their daughter's room. As the house settled into the quiet of the night, a chill seemed to fill Emily's room. The doll sat motionless in the dim light, its eyes glinting as if reflecting unseen moonlight. In the middle of the night, Emily stirred in her sleep, her dreams filled with unsettling images of dark water and distant laughter. The doll, still sitting in the chair, seemed to shift slightly, its head turning ever so slowly towards Emily's sleeping form. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling a strange mix of excitement and unease. She couldn't remember her dreams, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Sarah, noticing her daughter's unease, asked, "Did you sleep well, honey?" Emily nodded slowly, her eyes darting to the doll. "Yes, Mommy, but I think the doll was watching me." Sarah chuckled nervously, trying to dismiss her own discomfort. "It's just a doll, Emily. It can't watch you." But as the days went by, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Emily began talking to the doll, sharing secrets and playing games. At first, Sarah and John thought it was harmless fun, a child's vivid imagination. But soon, Emily's behavior became more withdrawn, and strange occurrences started happening around the house. One evening, Sarah was tucking Emily into bed when she noticed something odd. The doll's dress, once a faded blue, seemed to have brightened slightly. Its porcelain cheeks had a faint, rosy tint, as if the doll had come to life. Brushing it off as her imagination, Sarah kissed Emily goodnight and left the room, feeling a shiver run down her spine as she closed the door. Later that night, Sarah and John were woken by Emily's screams. Rushing to her room, they found her sitting up in bed, clutching the doll tightly. "She was talking to me, Mommy. She said she wants to play a game." Sarah hugged her daughter, trying to soothe her fears. "It's okay, sweetie. It was just a bad dream." But as she looked over Emily's shoulder at the doll's piercing blue eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The doll's smile seemed wider, more menacing, as if it was mocking her. From that moment on, the atmosphere in the Thompson household shifted. The once welcoming home felt oppressive, as if a dark cloud had settled over it. Emily's once cheerful demeanor faded, replaced by a quiet, almost haunted look. Sarah and John knew they had to find out more about the doll and its mysterious origins before it was too late. The days that followed were marked by a series of unsettling incidents that shook the Thompson family. Emily's once peaceful nights were now plagued with vivid nightmares. She would wake up screaming, her cries echoing through the house. "She wants to play! She wants to play!" Emily would sob, clinging to Sarah as if her life depended on it. Sarah and John tried to comfort her, attributing her fears to the stress of the move and the novelty of the old house. One morning, Sarah found Emily sitting on her bed, clutching the doll tightly. The normally bright and cheerful girl now had dark circles under her eyes, and her once vibrant smile had faded into a look of constant anxiety. "Mommy, the doll told me she wants to play a game," Emily said, her voice eerily calm. Sarah's unease grew. She decided to investigate the doll's origins, hoping to find some explanation for Emily's strange behavior. She began with the house's previous owners, the Cartwrights, who had lived in the house for decades before selling it to the Thompsons. Sarah tracked down Mrs. Cartwright, now living in a retirement home. When Sarah explained her situation, Mrs. Cartwright's expression turned grave. "That doll," she began, her voice trembling. "It belonged to Lily, the daughter of the original owners, the Hendersons. Lily was a sweet but lonely child. She drowned in the pond behind the house over 50 years ago." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "Do you think her spirit is connected to the doll?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Cartwright nodded slowly. "Lily's spirit has never found peace. Many believe she is seeking vengeance for her untimely death. That doll was her most cherished possession, and her spirit has latched onto it." Sarah's heart sank. She thanked Mrs. Cartwright and hurried home, her mind racing. She shared the story with John that evening. "We need to get rid of that doll," he said firmly. "It's clearly having a negative effect on Emily." But when they tried to take the doll away, Emily screamed and cried, clinging to it desperately. "No, you can't take her. She'll be angry," she sobbed. Realizing the depth of their daughter's attachment, Sarah and John decided to keep a close watch on the doll and Emily, hoping to find a way to break the doll's hold on their little girl. As the days went by, the strange occurrences became more frequent and more disturbing. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut without warning, and eerie whispers filled the air at night. Sarah began to feel as if she was being watched constantly, a pair of unseen eyes following her every move. One night, Sarah was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when she heard a faint giggle behind her. She turned quickly, but no one was there. Shaking off the feeling, she continued her work, but the giggle came again, louder this time. She spun around, heart pounding, to find the doll sitting on the kitchen counter, its blue eyes gleaming in the dim light. "John, come here, quick!" Sarah called out, her voice shaking. John rushed in, looking alarmed. "What is it?" "The doll. It was in Emily's room. How did it get here?" Sarah whispered, pointing at the doll. John picked up the doll, examining it closely. "This is getting out of hand. We need to do something." That night they decided to lock the doll in the attic, hoping to distance it from Emily. They placed it in the old trunk and closed the lid firmly. But as they walked away, a cold breeze swept through the attic, making the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. The next morning, Emily woke up with a strange smile on her face. "She came back," she said simply, pointing to the chair by her bed where the doll sat, its dress looking fresher and its porcelain cheeks more rosy than before. Sarah and John were at a loss. They had no idea how the doll had returned to Emily's room. Desperation led them to contact a local priest, Father Matthews, hoping for some spiritual guidance. Father Matthews listened intently as they recounted their experiences. "This doll is a conduit for a restless spirit," Father Matthews explained. "Lily's spirit is attached to it because of her unresolved death. She needs closure, a way to find peace." "What can we do?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with despair. "You need to confront Lily's spirit directly," Father Matthews said. "Hold a memorial for her, acknowledge her presence, and help her understand that she is remembered and loved. Only then can her spirit find peace." Sarah and John decided to follow Father Matthews's advice. They organized a small memorial in their backyard, near the pond where Lily had drowned. They invited a few neighbors who remembered the tragic event and shared stories of Lily's short life. During the memorial, Emily stood by the pond, clutching the doll. "Lily, we remember you," she said softly. "You don't have to be angry anymore." For a moment, the air around them felt heavy, and a chill ran through the crowd. Then, just as suddenly, it lifted. Emily looked up at her parents, a serene expression on her face. "She says thank you," she whispered. As the memorial ended, the Thompsons felt a sense of hope. Perhaps they had finally found a way to appease Lily's spirit and break the doll's hold on their daughter. But a lingering unease remained, as if the true resolution was yet to come. In the days following the memorial, the atmosphere in the Thompson household seemed to lighten. Emily's nightmares ceased, and the doll no longer appeared to have the same sinister presence. The family began to believe that Lily's spirit had found some measure of peace. Yet beneath this fragile calm, an undercurrent of unease persisted, especially for Sarah. Determined to ensure Lily's spirit was truly at rest, Sarah turned to the town's local historian, Mrs. Whitmore. An elderly woman with a wealth of knowledge about Willow Creek's past, Mrs. Whitmore was known for her stories of the town's history and its lingering spirits. When Sarah explained the situation, Mrs. Whitmore's expression turned grave. "Lily Henderson was a tragic figure," she began, her voice tinged with sorrow. "Her death was accidental, but there were always whispers of foul play. Some believed she was pushed into the pond by someone she trusted. That suspicion, that lingering doubt, could have tethered her spirit to this world." "Do you think there's a way to help her find peace?" Sarah asked, her concern for Emily growing with each passing day. Mrs. Whitmore nodded slowly. "Lily's spirit seeks closure. She needs to know the truth about her death, and to be remembered with love, not fear. Perhaps if you uncover the full story and share it, it might help her find peace. Sarah decided to delve deeper into the town's history, starting with the local archives. She spent hours poring over old newspapers, letters, and photographs, piecing together Lily's story. The more she read, the more she realized that Lily's death was surrounded by mystery and speculation. There were conflicting accounts about the day she drowned, and several names kept appearing, names of people who were close to the Henderson family at the time. One name stood out: Margaret Clark, Lily's nanny. According to old reports, Margaret was the last person seen with Lily before she drowned. Some believed she had been negligent, while others thought there was something more sinister at play. Sarah decided to visit Margaret's descendants, hoping to uncover more about that fateful day. She found Margaret's granddaughter, Helen, living in a nearby town. Helen was initially reluctant to talk, but when Sarah explained her situation, she opened up. "My grandmother always felt guilty about Lily's death," Helen said. "She loved that little girl like her own. She said she turned her back for just a moment, and when she looked back, Lily was gone. She always believed someone else was there that day." "Did she ever mention who she thought it might be?" Sarah asked, feeling a chill run down her spine. Helen hesitated before replying. She suspected it was someone from the Henderson social circle, someone who had a grudge against the family, but she never had proof. Armed with this new information, Sarah returned to Mrs. Whitmore. "I think Margaret was right," she said. "But how can we find the truth after all these years?" Mrs. Whitmore suggested holding a séance to communicate directly with Lily's spirit. "If Lily can tell us what happened, we might be able to finally set her free," she said. That evening, Sarah, John, and Mrs. Whitmore gathered in Emily's room, where the doll now sat in its usual chair. Emily watched them with wide eyes, clutching her teddy bear. "Will this help Lily, Mommy?" she asked. "I hope so, sweetie," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. Mrs. Whitmore lit candles around the room and placed a photograph of Lily next to the doll. They joined hands, and Mrs. Whitmore began to chant softly, calling out to Lily's spirit. The room grew cold, and the candle flames flickered. A soft, childlike voice filled the air, echoing as if from a great distance. "I was pushed. I trusted her." "Who did this to you, Lily?" Mrs. Whitmore asked gently. There was a long pause, and then the voice came again, filled with sorrow. "Margaret's friend. She was angry. Said we took everything." Sarah and John exchanged a glance. Margaret's friend. They had never considered that angle. "Who was she, Lily?" Sarah asked. Lydia Evans." The name sent a shock through Sarah. Lydia Evans had been a close friend of the Henderson family, known for her volatile temper and envy of their wealth. She had left town shortly after Lily's death and was never heard from again. As the séance ended, the room returned to its normal temperature. Emily looked at her parents, her eyes wide. "Lily says thank you," she whispered. "She feels better now." The next day, Sarah and John dug deeper into Lydia Evans' history. They found records indicating she had indeed harbored resentment towards the Hendersons, feeling that they had wronged her family. With this new understanding, they decided to hold another memorial, this time revealing the truth about Lily's death and ensuring her story was fully told. During the memorial, Sarah stood before the gathered townspeople and recounted what they had discovered. Lily Henderson did not die by accident. She was a victim of jealousy and anger. But today we remember her for the loving, innocent child she was, and we acknowledge the wrong done to her. As Sarah spoke, a sense of peace seemed to settle over the gathering. The air grew warm, and the oppressive feeling that had haunted the Thompson household lifted. Emily, holding the doll, smiled brightly. "Lily says goodbye," she said softly. The family returned home, hoping they had finally helped Lily find the peace she deserved. But as they settled in for the night, a faint, childlike giggle echoed through the halls, a reminder that while they had come far, the journey was not yet over. In the days following the second memorial, the Thompson household felt lighter and more at peace. Emily's nightmares ceased completely, and the once eerie doll now seemed to be just that, a simple doll. The oppressive atmosphere that had once suffused the house was gone, replaced by a sense of normalcy and calm. Yet Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something unresolved. She sensed that Lily's spirit, while quieter, had not fully departed. One evening, Emily approached her parents with the doll in her hands. "Mommy, Daddy, Lily says it's time for her to go," she said, her voice filled with a serene certainty that belied her years. Unsure of what to do next, Sarah and John decided to return the doll to the attic trunk where it was originally found. They hoped this would allow Lily's spirit to rest permanently. Emily watched as they placed the doll back in the trunk and closed the lid. She seemed unusually calm, as if she understood the significance of the act. That night, as they tucked Emily into bed, she smiled at them. "Lily says goodbye. She's happy now." As the Thompsons went to bed, a sense of calm settled over the house. But just as they were about to drift off to sleep, they heard a faint, childlike giggle echoing through the halls. They exchanged uneasy glances, but tried to convince themselves it was just their imagination. The next morning, they found the trunk in the attic open, the doll sitting on the chair in Emily's room once more. Her piercing blue eyes seemed to follow them, and an unsettling sense of dread filled the air. Sarah and John realized that Lily's spirit was not completely appeased. They had made progress, but something still held her back. Determined to free their daughter from the doll's grasp, they decided to seek out a professional medium to help them communicate with Lily and find out what more she needed to move on. They contacted a renowned medium named Madame Serena, who had a reputation for dealing with restless spirits. She arrived at their home, a striking woman with an air of confidence and mystery. After listening to their story, she nodded gravely. "Lily's spirit is tethered to this world by unresolved trauma and deep sorrow. We must find the source of her pain and help her confront it." That night, Madame Serena set up a circle in Emily's room, placing the doll in the center. Sarah, John, and Emily joined hands with her, forming a ring around the doll. The room was filled with a soft glow of candlelight, and the air seemed to hum with anticipation. Madame Serena began to chant, calling out to Lily's spirit. The room grew cold, and the candle flames flickered violently. A soft, childlike voice filled the air, filled with sadness and longing. Why did she do it? Why did she hurt me? Lily, we are here to help you find peace, Madame Serena said gently. Who hurt you and why? She was angry, jealous. She said I took everything from her, the voice replied, trembling with emotion. Do you mean Lydia Evans? Madame Serena asked. Yes, Lydia. She pushed me. She said I didn't deserve to be happy. Sarah and John exchanged a glance. The pieces were falling into place. Lydia's jealousy had led her to commit a terrible act, and Lily's spirit had been trapped in a cycle of pain and confusion ever since. Lily, you need to understand that what happened to you was not your fault, Madame Serena said soothingly. You did nothing wrong. It's time to let go of the anger and the pain. There was a long silence, and then Lily's voice came again, softer this time. But I'm scared. What if she's still angry? Lydia is no longer here, Lily, Sarah said, her voice breaking with emotion. You are safe now. We remember you with love, and we want you to find peace. The air grew warm, and a sense of calm settled over the room. The doll's eyes, which had seemed so piercing and malevolent, now looked sad and resigned. Thank you, Lily's voice whispered, barely audible. I feel lighter. Madame Serena nodded, a look of satisfaction on her face. She is ready to move on. You've helped her more than you know. The candle flames flickered one last time before going out completely, plunging the room into darkness. When they turned the lights back on, the doll looked different. Its dress was still old and worn, but the menacing aura was gone. It was just a doll again, a relic of the past with no more hold over the present. In the following days, the Thompson family felt a profound sense of relief. The house was finally at peace. Emily resumed her cheerful demeanor, and the strange occurrences ceased completely. They decided to bury the doll in the garden, under the tree where Lily used to play, as a final act of closure. As they placed the doll in the ground and covered it with soil, Emily said a little prayer. Goodbye, Lily. I hope you're happy now. The family stood together, feeling the weight of the past lifting from their shoulders. They knew that Lily's spirit had finally found the peace it deserved, and they could move forward, free from the shadows that had once haunted them. But late at night, when the wind whispered through the trees and the moon cast eerie shadows across the garden, they sometimes thought they heard the faint sound of a child's laughter mingling with the rustling leaves, a gentle reminder of the spirit that had once been bound to their lives and the bond they would always share.